Hey guys, welcome back. Today I have a very special treat for you guys. As you can see, I'm wearing my Deep Vibes hoodie, and that's because today I'm sharing with you an interview I did with my brother-in-law, one of my favorite people in the world, Mr. Johnnie Vibes. And if you have ever asked yourself the question, what does it take to actually be successful at mid-stakes? Well, he has opened up the playbook because recently on his channel, he started what's called Embrace the Grind, in which he dedicated an entire 30 days to grinding poker every single day and documenting his journey along the way, playing a total of 150 hours. Not only is he going to answer the questions, how much can you make? He's going to answer the questions, how do you mentally prepare for the grind that is poker, that includes swings and variants, and what does it actually take to be successful? So I know you guys love to get an inside look on the life of a poker player, and what he's done with his challenge really just answers all of those questions. So to make sure to check out his channel if you haven't already. And if you want to know more about the challenge and get even deeper, here's the interview I did with him for my Risk Everyday podcast, which you can also subscribe to in iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's a show about risk takers and dream makers. Check it out. All right, here's my interview with Johnnie Vibes. What's up?
Hey.
This is awesome. I'm so excited to be interviewing like my family member.
Yeah, it's crazy because we have conversations all the time, but never with a microphone in between us.
Actually, that's not even true.
Okay, well, it feels different this time.
Ever since Johnnie Vibes is a thing, we're like always doing this, which is cool because I feel like I have a comrade in this like media thing that we've decided to go through and connect with people. So it's nice. This is awesome.
Yeah, normally though I'm holding the camera and it's like a personal experience for myself, so I can do as many takes as I want, and I feel like I'm kind of in private, and then it just goes up into the internet and I kind of forget about it. But now that we're like sitting next to each other, it does feel a little bit different for me.
Yeah, because you're not in control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like when someone else is holding the camera, I don't feel as comfortable.
Totally. I went through that for a long time. I get it. Even when people are interviewing me now, sometimes I'm like, I try to turn around on them. They're like, hey, I asked the questions. I'm like, oh, yeah, get it. So first of all, for those who are listening, it's their first introduction to you. Tell us who you are and what you're all about, and a little bit about, the Johnnie Vibes and your YouTube and how you really got into it.
Okay, yeah. So Johnnie Vibes is, I honestly don't even really remember how that name got started, but my first name is obviously Johnny, and I had a clothing company that was called Deep Vibes. I still have the company. I'm in the process of changing it to Vibes Clothing, but eventually Johnnie Vibes just was me identifying with my company, and then it just became something that kind of blew up once I became an influencer in the poker space. But it wasn't necessarily something that I chose. It was just something that was kind of given to me. But the reason I even got into making videos was I've been playing poker for a long time, and I've always been kind of looking for things that creatively inspired me or that were fun. And I remember I went to EDC like probably 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. And I remember they were making these crazy mashups and like layering songs over each other. And I remember feeling so inspired by that and thinking like, wow, I've never heard this song presented in this way. And all these people are being so inspired by it that they're like singing the words, and then they're so surprised by the drop that comes. And I was like, I want to learn how to do that. So I remember driving home and Googling like how to mash up, how to layer songs, like where to get started. And I went home and I downloaded Ableton and started like watching tutorials on YouTube and made my first mix. I called it Sharing the Love, and it was so much fun for me. It was like my creative outlet and then when I started playing for my friends, and my friends would be like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. it was this extra level of reward when people would recognize all the effort that I put into it. So making videos was kind of something that always fell along that path, like almost as similarly as the audio thing, as the mashups, where I saw other people making videos and I thought, wow, that's so cool how they did that transition, and the beat matched the little effect that they did there, and I just started really paying attention to the composition of videos, and I started making my own videos for my clothing brand and having so much fun with it. And then travel videos with my wife. We would go to Mexico, and I'm like, I'm going to make a little recap of us going to Mexico. And then we would be in Italy and do the same exact thing. And I had my drone, I was flying it all over the place and just having so much fun with it. And it was one of those natural progressions where I was like, maybe I should get in front of the camera, which was like super scary because I was always the one holding the camera, pointing it at my wife or other people. And then the first time I pointed the camera at myself and decided that I wanted to do some sort of video where I told some sort of story, I remember like watching those videos and being like, man, I have a lot of work to do. And it was just the same thing with the mashups. You know, when I first made my first mashup, it wasn't great. It was good, but I knew that there was so many things I could do to get better. And that process of getting better was fueling me. And it was so fun to get better and put the next mashup out and be like really proud of it. And then the progression to where I was actually DJing in a club, which I never thought would happen. And then to the progression of where I would put out a video on YouTube and just be so proud of the final product and have people coming up to me in the casino and being like, I just watched your latest video. The production value is so amazing. The story that you told. So I never really got into making mashups because I wanted to be like some superstar DJ. It was just that I thought it would be fun. I never got into making videos because I wanted to be some influencer. It was just because I thought it would be fun. And one foot in front of the other, and it's just turned into something that's still fun, but something that people recognize me for and follow along with and watch all the time. It's really cool.
That is what I think is so inspiring, is that so often I think we get caught up in how do things make money, what's the end result, how am I going to get paid back for the time I'm putting in. And part of living a full life is doing things that are enjoyable and getting lost in just learning how to do something just for the fun of it. And I think the most successful people in the world, at least successful in terms of both results in money and all-around happiness, are people who can find what they love doing just for fun and become so passionate about it that they're just so good they get paid for some reason, for like, you know, that we're just attracted to people who are in love with what they do.
Totally. And when I think about even playing poker, I was never in love with poker starting out, but it was something like, we're so close and you're married to my brothers and you guys were so passionate in love with poker that just being around you guys, I kind of fed off of that, and you were introducing me to the game, and I was learning things about the way you guys were talking about the game, and I just started to see the beauty of it, and I started to really love it because of you guys. So based off of your passion and energy for something, it really spills over into the people that are around you. Like there's no possible way that I couldn't have eventually loved poker with how much time I was spending with you guys.
Yeah. And I also think back to when you did your first DJing thing in like the biggest club in Arizona, or wait, what city was it? Scottsdale, which is an awesome place to party, and where we had your bachelor and bachelorette party, and thinking like, oh, I want to capture this. And it's like right when the GoPro came out, and we had a GoPro, and I'll be sure to put this video in the show notes because it's so fun. It was just so long ago, and like before people were like, we had a GoPro in the club, and we were just like putting it in people's faces, and we had no idea what we were doing, but like even that, just being able to use your mix, and I just wanted to show you like how cool you looked, and I don't know, maybe it's like it feels really natural to see, you know, after having made that video for you, and then like seeing you now with like your it like just seems to like come full circle.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like one thing that's really interesting about that is that a GoPro in a nightclub setting, GoPros don't perform well in low light. And like if I was to do that over again, I would never take a GoPro into a club.
Listen, I was just doing this out of love, and I didn't know what I was doing.
But
I
that's
just
the whole
wanted to,
point.
like,
That's the whole point of everything. It's like we had to go through the process of learning what did and didn't work, and you managed to put together an amazing video, even with the limited production stuff
all we
that
had to do was put our cell phone on and like
Exactly.
make our own light, which was pretty funny.
Exactly, but you weren't a pro video editor when the first time you sat down to do that, and you didn't know that the GoPro probably wasn't the best solution. But you have to go through that and have the fun along the way and learn kind of what's going on to recognize, 4 years later that I'm probably not going to take a GoPro this time. I'm going to take this other camera with this lens that performs better in low light, and I'm going to film it this frames per second, and like all these things that come up in our head now. But it all started with just actually turning whatever we had at our disposal on and working with that.
That night was so fun, actually, that we almost lost all of that footage because my husband has a craving for pizza when he gets drunk. We know this.
Of course.
And he left the GoPro in the pizza parlor, but everybody was so drunk that nobody stole it.
Yep.
It just like sat there and we got it back. So
Everybody was so focused on their pizza, they would not have seen a GoPro.
yeah, it was just sitting there. People probably didn't even know what it was back then. I was like, that's like years ago. It was the GoPro 1. Anyway, so you started your YouTube channel. It has just skyrocketed, and it's really cool because I hear people all the time. We're always in poker rooms and poker spaces, and they're wearing your sweatshirts, the Vibes sweatshirts. So before we jump into your challenge that I'm really excited to talk about, I kind of want to know a little bit more about what the sort of like shift in your awareness and like visibility in poker has been like personally, professionally. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me with creating the content was I just wanted to be authentically who I was, and it's so easy to just be me that I didn't want to create some persona that wasn't me, because being a different person walking out the front door and actually what's on camera is too much work. So I just was unapologetically going to be me, which meant I was going to dress weird, quote unquote, to a lot of the Midwesterners that play poker. I was not going to eat meat, which is like something that's not popular in the poker community. So I just really didn't care. So I think that's one of the things that people really attached to, was that I didn't care. Like early on, I burned off a bunch of money and like talked about it in one of my videos, and people were like, wow, people don't really talk about how much they lose, and they could see like the pain on my face, and it just became almost like not just a creative outlet, but a way for me to vent, express myself in an honest way. And I think that's one of the reasons why it became so popular so quickly, was they felt like they were seeing something that was real and something that they could relate to. And so it wasn't a lot of work to quote unquote create this online brand, because it was just me being me.
But what has it been like since you have become so visible? What has it been like personally, like how have you really I'm just saying, like, at least for me, I know it was like really hard to go from I'm just a player, I just go in the casino, I just play, to like people recognizing you. Like what has the whole shift into like this in our world just really
Well, I will say that I definitely feel a higher sense of responsibility to represent my personal brand in an authentic way and just be the person that I strive to be, because there's so many times, I'm known for being someone that's, compassionate, caring, doesn't freak out. So like, I'm not really allowed to freak out in public or like berate somebody at the poker table, which is great. I would never want to be that anyways, but like there's this higher level of accountability now that there's 8 other eyes watching me. And when I get incredibly unlucky in a hand, all eyes are on me. Like, is Johnny gonna freak out? Is he gonna be Johnnie Vibes, or is he gonna be some like crazy person? You know?
Yeah, totally. And it's funny because sometimes I think when we get away from being present, like I forget that who I am and my face and my body language is communicating something. Like I just forget until someone's like, "Hey, are you Johnnie Vibes?" Or are you, and then you're like, "Oh shit, I forgot." Like my face or I probably look pissed because I am.
Yeah, no, there's definitely been times where I've been at the table, and poker's one of those games where you're gonna have moments of misery, and when I'm losing and things aren't going my way, I'll just go inwards a little bit and not talk and kind of just be on my phone and withdraw from the relationships at the table. And then someone will inevitably come up to me and say, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I'm really inspired by your videos, and that this one particular video really hit home for me when you talked about gratitude." And then I'm like, "Oh man, like what am I doing here sulking? Like, thanks for reminding me about that video that I made." So it's beneficial, honestly. I think that having higher accountability is only something that is going to be beneficial for me, which is part of this challenge. Is like when I declared that I was going to play for 30 days in a row and that I was going to hit 150 hours over 30 days. Once I declared to the internet and 100,000 people know about it now, there's this higher level of accountability. Like, I don't want to fail at it anymore, you know? When you tell yourself, it's easy to kind of slack off a little bit or lie to yourself and say, well, I know you said you were going to do this, but if you don't do it, it's going to be okay because nobody really knows about it. Which is kind of sad when you think about it, that we aren't the most accountable to ourselves. But that's part of the growth process that I need to go through, that everyone needs to go through.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about embrace the grind. So what inspired you, and what exactly were the parameters and rules that you kind of put out there and set for yourself?
Yeah, and embrace the grind was just something that I came up with around Christmas time when I was really thinking about what I wanted to do in 2019, personally, professionally. And I just knew that I wanted to push myself harder in 2019 with creating content, in my poker game, in building Vibes brand clothing. And so I remember talking to Olga about things that I thought would be fun, things that I thought would generate compelling content. And I told her, you know what, I think I'm going to play poker for 30 days, as many hours as I can. I'm going to create content during that time. And it's going to be like the real life grind of a mid-stakes grinder. Back like when I started, this is what I was doing to make it to a level where I could make a living and have the kind of life that I wanted to. And she was like, "When are you gonna do it?" I'm like, probably like March or something. I'll pick a time where I'm not gonna be drinking as well, so I can like really focus on this. And she's like, "Why don't you do it right now?" I was like, well, we got this bachelor party coming up, and it's January and Super Bowl and all this stuff and all these excuses. And she was like, "No, I think you should do it right now." So I was like, okay. And I think it's really important to have people like that in your life, where when I like tell you an idea, you're instantly going to make me accountable for it. Like, okay, I think you should start tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And it's been great because now we're in February, in the middle of February, and I'm about to this is day 30. Like, I'm on the last day. And there was no reason for me to wait till March or April or whatever. And all the lessons that I've learned along the way and all the content that I've been able to create, now I'm ready to move on to the next thing that I would be months behind on. So like having people like you and Olga and my brother Andrew and my spurring me on to like reach higher, elevate higher, has been really cool and really beneficial.
So it was 30 days 150 hours
150 hours, and I thought it would be more compelling if I played poker every single day. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to play all 30 days, and I wanted to maintain some semblance of balance in my life. So I was going to bed at midnight every night, and I was waking up at 8 o'clock every morning. I didn't want to get caught in sessions where I was like playing 12, 14 hours and ruining the next day, because I wanted to be able to take my dog to the park. I wanted to be able to talk to Olga in the morning. I wanted to be able to ship off packages for the brand, for Vibes Clothing. I wanted to be able to go to the gym. All these things that go into making my life balanced and normal. The only way I was going to do that was by cutting my sessions off at like 5 hours, 6 hours, no longer than 7 hours. And that isn't necessarily optimal when it comes to making money in poker, because I was leaving good games very often. And I was staying in bad games because I was like, well, I need to get at least 5 hours in this game to carry me through to the next day, because I didn't want to be on day 28 and need 40 hours left, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So while equity and expected value wise, I probably lost some value by doing this well-balanced schedule, I think that it helped me maintain sanity and maintain a level of truth when it comes to what grinding poker is really like, because staying in bad games, playing for getting crushed and not wanting to go back to the casino the next day, that's all a normal part of poker. And because I had to go back the next day and push through, multiple 4 or 5 days in a row of just getting crushed and coming back to the casino and then filming it so that people could see what it was really like, I think that it created a genuine, authentic experience of what the grind is and what embracing the grind is, the ups, the downs. And I think that a lot of people will pull some inspiration from it, but they're also gonna see the dose of reality that it's not all rainbows, and it's tough work, and what you're signing up for is some pain. And the problem is what people look at the end of the 30 days and they're gonna see, oh, this was your hourly. That's a great hourly. They're not gonna realize that 7 out of those 30 days, I was in pain, and I felt like I was being tortured. And when you look at the graph, you can kind of see that. You can see the dips and the valleys and the highs and the lows. And the lows are pretty annoying and pretty frustrating. But in totality, when you step back and look at it, which a lot of people are going to do, they're going to be like, wow, successful challenge. You did a great job, great hourly. But I really wanted to paint the picture of it's tough.
Yeah. It's not all rainbows and unicorns out there, everyone who says they want to be a poker professional. And I think, though, that what you just said is such a great lesson for anybody who is currently in the down, and a reminder for, it's like whenever you're in it and it's hard, it's always also us like looking and just in like a small space. It's like this session or maybe yesterday and today. And even when you say like most people are going to look at it zoomed out. But it is also a lesson. Like if you zoomed out to the week, then it's a little less painful. You're like, oh, well, actually I had a couple good days in this week. And then if you zoom it out 2 weeks, you're like, actually I'm winning in the 2 weeks, but right now this moment's really painful, but it's because I'm only focused here. And if you zoom out even farther, and especially for any poker player who's had any longevity or in a career, it's like the farther you zoom out, no matter what situation it is, whether it's poker or not, is really how you get perspective in anything that may help you when you're in that like shit moment.
Yeah, totally. One of the things that was also interesting for me is some of the things that every poker player preaches is that it's all one long session. That's something that people say all the time. But when you're playing 2 to 3 times a week, it doesn't really feel like that. Like every session feels really self-contained. Like when I leave the casino down money and I'm not coming back for 3 days, it kind of feels like it's not one long session. But when you're going to the casino every single day and I'm getting up at the 5.5 hour mark, 6 hour mark, and I'm down $175 or $600, it doesn't really feel like I'm down. It feels like I'm just taking a break till I come back in the morning. And that was one thing that by going every single day, I actually kind of felt and internalized that, yeah, it is kind of one long session. It doesn't really matter that I'm leaving down the next day because I'm just pausing the clock and coming back in the morning. So I kind of learned some lessons myself, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. What about, so what do you think was the biggest lesson that you learned? I know that there's been so many, but if you had to just highlight one, take with you forever, and leave with anybody who's been watching, what would it have been?
Okay, I think for me, the biggest lesson is that I'm never going to have it all figured out. And the fact that I've done this particular mid-stakes grind for probably 5 years of my career, 5 years ago, in a time frame that was probably like 2012 to 2010 to like 2015, I assume that since I've done that and moved on to higher stakes, that if I came back and did that, it would just be easy because it's like I had accomplished that already. But it's never easy. And thinking that you have it all figured out, or thinking that you could just pick right up where you left off, it's just not the case. You kind of always have to be practicing, and you always have to relearn lessons over and over, and life is just like a continual process of relearning the same things over and over. Just because I learned this lesson that it's all one long session, in 2 months I might not feel that way again, and I'm going to need to like re-practice that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and anytime you actually think you have it figured out, it's going to be a really sad and horrible awakening when you go back and you're like, oh, I'm just going to like make $100 an hour, and then you get punched in the face. You're like, oh, this isn't, and you freak out.
Oh yeah, especially nowadays, because the thought is in a lot of circles is that poker's getting harder, and I tend to agree with that. So thinking that you are able to execute what you were able to execute 1 year ago is presumptuous. It's presumptuous that the player pool is going to stay the same, and that your skills are static and they're not going to degrade. And those both aren't true. Unless you're really working on your game, your skills are not going to improve. And other people are working on their game most likely at a faster rate than you are. A large player pool will be. So you're fighting forces that don't want you to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever people say they want to become a poker professional, it's like, do you, first of all, even understand what professionals these days are doing, what their life is like, and how hard they're working and how much they're studying? Because if you don't, and you aren't going to take on that life yourself, playing professionally just isn't for you. You'll never make it.
Yeah, 100%. And we get to see that in our own family, because there was a time where me, you, and Andrew were all playing pretty much the same stakes and all pretty much had similar skill levels. And I would say probably more recently, I've started branching off into so many other things, learning about so many other things. Like I'm big into marketing now, and I'm big into storytelling and creating videos, and how do I do this transition and this mashup, and like my head is full of so many ideas that I'm working on, so many things I'm trying to get better at. Same with you. Podcasting, videos, you're taking seminars, you're doing yoga, your plate is so full of all these things. And Andrew is poker. He's like charts and talking poker and strategy and hands and in the trenches. So his skills have gotten way higher, and he's working so hard on that one thing. So for me, playing 10-20 on a regular basis 4 years ago, I'm just not the same player that I was a couple years ago, and probably around the same type of player that I was 4 years ago. And to think that I can just jump back into high stakes and be fine is just not true.
Yeah, I think that takes such a level of self-awareness and humility, and also just like realness to really say. And I think that, I mean, it's part of the struggle of being a multi-passionate person. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think maybe I should just focus on one thing, but I think sometimes that would just be denying a really amazing part of ourselves that and I love that you bring that up, because when you ask yourself, anybody who's listening, what am I willing to sacrifice and what am I willing to give up to get to a certain level? I think it just brings a bit of overall planning and security in your own self with what you're willing to do, because you're not beating yourself up for not being where you were playing the stakes higher. You're just like knowing that you aren't willing to let go of video making, let go of all the other things that you're doing in your clothing brand. It's like, this is okay, and I'm cool with it, because this is where I am.
Totally. Yeah. I had a talk with someone about this, and they asked me if I was willing to do what it took to be one of the highest stakes cash game players in the world. And I thought a lot about it, and no, I'm not. You know, there's so many things going on in my life that fuel me and give me so much joy and are so fun for me that I'm not willing to give up those things. And like the balance that I have in my life, where I'm living in San Diego and having a walking lifestyle and spending time with my wife and dog and doing all these things that are fun for me. I'm just not willing to give all that up to trade being one of the best high stakes cash game players in the world. Definitely not.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing. And so when you talk about embrace the grind, really that's like this overall message of everything that we've just talked about, which is embracing exactly what it is to live the life that you really want, whether that's like balance and, like poker or whatever. It's embracing and having fun with and enjoying the journey of whatever is in front of you, with a level of accountability, with a level of pushing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love the message and what you've done with it. And so today is the last day.
Yeah, today's day 30. And there's so many lessons that I've learned along the way, some of which that I've talked about. But I think the word embrace is so key, because it really encapsulates that the downs are equally as important as the ups, and you kind of have to like embrace all of it and realize that it's just part of the journey and part of the process. So I think that it was a success. Like, embrace the grind was a success. And while I didn't make all the money and I didn't run super hot, I kind of accomplished what I thought I was going I kind of accomplished what I thought I was going to accomplish. Everything as far as the number of hours that I was able to put in, the amount of money that I made, I thought it was going to be somewhere in that neighborhood. What I underestimated was how difficult the losses were going to be, because when you lose multiple days in a row and you know that there's so many eyes on you, counting on you to go back to the casino and counting on, quote unquote, one of the best professional players that vlogs to win, a lot of people expect me to win. The pressure was there from time to time, and it was good. I embraced it, and it was fun, and it's not over yet, but I have like 6.5 more hours to go, and unless I totally lose my mind, it's going to be a success. I don't see that happening though.
Yeah, you got 6 hours left, but hopefully, we can check back in here. I'm not sure. I really want to be able to give the results of how everything went. So.
Yeah, I think that my video is going to be released prior to this podcast, so I have no problem sharing on the podcast. We're going to hit the 150 hour mark right on the dot, and that was mostly by design. I wanted to keep the life balanced. We played all 30 days in a row. The shortest session that we played was probably 2.5 hours, and the longest session we played was probably 7.5 hours. So it was always in that 5-hour sweet spot range. I left quite a few good games, and I stayed in quite a few bad games. Did not play my best at times. There were times that I spewed. Everybody says this, but I feel like I didn't run the best. That's something that's very common with poker players. Some interesting stats is that I was dealt aces versus kings 3 times, and I was dealt kings versus aces 3 times.
That you know of.
That I know of.
Yeah.
And I think that that's pretty high for 150 hours.
I would have no idea.
And
I
I
don't know
actually,
if I've played that much before.
I only got set over set once, and it was the wrong way, and I lost my whole stack that time. So some pretty interesting normal things that you would experience over 150 hours, and I was able to win so far after 143.5 hours, $49.20 an hour, which I'm pretty proud of based on the games that I was playing in, and I think that I didn't perform up to the level that I'm capable of. But it's definitely nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a pretty, for playing, it's 5-5.
Yeah.
That's a pretty.
Yeah, and one thing that I never did is I never straddled, because I wanted to keep the purity of the challenge intact. When people were asking to straddle, I was like, no, it's okay. I don't want to straddle, because I don't want to make the game bigger that could possibly inflate my stats a little bit. I counted everything to the dollar. If I got a massage, I didn't take it out of the bankroll. If I tipped, I did take it out of the bankroll. If I tipped the cashier, I was wanted every dollar to be perfectly matched.
Oh, that's awesome. So if So for those who have watched and have followed the journey or are listening to this and they are inspired to #embrace the grind and maybe put together their own challenge or whatever it is that they feel would both enhance their life and their game, what would you want to impart on them?
Yeah, well, one of the pieces of feedback that I received that I was most proud of and that really I internalized and felt the best about was people were saying that I don't really play poker, but you've really inspired me to get on my grind in X industry. And I think that that's really cool. You know, if they're in real estate and they're watching me play poker and it's inspiring them to hit the streets harder or sell more or work harder on their real estate business, I thought that was really cool. It is not necessarily poker related. So getting back to your question,
which is if whether it's real estate, poker, and they've decided to embrace the grind and put together their own journey or goal or path, what advice would you give them?
So expanding on that, you got to say it out loud and you got to tell people what your grind is and what you want to accomplish over the next X number of days. And even if it's just your wife, your friend, tell at least 4 or 5 people, so that when they see you again and they're like, hey, how is your grind going with X? You said you were going to do this, that somebody beyond yourself is making you accountable for whatever you set out to do. I think that if I wouldn't have told so many people and declared it on my YouTube, I might not have made 150 hours. And I remember there was actually a day where I was on day like 35 because I started not drinking prior to the challenge, where I had lost like 3 days in a row and I was really frustrated and I was like, you know what, a margarita sounds so good tonight. And I posted on my Instagram story and I'm like, hey guys, I've gone 34 days without having a drink. I'm thinking about having a drink tonight even though there's 4 more days left in Embrace the Grind. What do you guys think? And there was like 1,000 people that sent me a message that clicked no, don't drink. And the no's outweighed the yeses on the voting. And I was like, wow, there's a minimum of 1,000 people that are counting on me to embrace the grind and not have a drink on day 34. So that accountability led me to not having a drink and pushing through. So
it was actually way more close than I thought it should have been. There were a lot of people that were like, just go for it, have a drink.
Yeah, but I can see where they're coming from because they were like, you're on day 34, you know, you declared that you were going to do it 30 days. And they're like, you're working so hard for free for us to inspire us. Just have a little drink. Don't worry about it. And then the no's were like, no, you can do it, you know? So.
Yeah. Well, I think that it actually brings up an important point about your advice, which is tell people, but also, I mean, something that we talk about on podcasts is like make your declarations, have a vision, and have people who stand for you. Mm-hmm. It's also, you also want to make sure it's the right kind of people and that also you communicate to them and take responsibility yourself. Because I know, like, I remember somebody told me like, oh, I told my wife I wanted to do something, and then when she told me I did, I got mad at her because you were like in shame about not doing it. So it's like this is a friendship that goes both ways with accountability, and you got to be responsible too. So I think that's really important to say.
Yeah, and that's actually something that you should verbalize when you say this is my declaration, and my request of you is that you hold me very accountable to this. So that when you follow up with me and I say something, you give me some pushback and not like, oh, a pat on the back. It's okay. I know you're working hard. So it's a 2-part thing. Make the declaration and request accountability.
And take responsibility when they do it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners or anything about the grind?
Yeah, I think that we touched on it when we first started talking, but the things that have come to fruition in my life that are the things like being an influencer, being able to DJ at clubs, making a living playing poker, all these things that people see on the outside and they're like, how do I become an influencer? How do I become a professional poker player? How do I book DJing gigs? How do I create my own clothing brand? Most of these questions that I get on a daily basis are rooted in the destination. They're rooted in how do I make money? Or they're rooted in how do I become quote unquote internet famous? And I think that that's the foundation of that is so flawed, and it's not the path to get you to those places. The path is really loving what those things are. So if you want to be a superstar DJ playing in a club, that's not your intention. Your intention is, I love playing music so much that I'm just going to play music in my living room for my dog, who's not going to give me much feedback. And I'm doing it because I love it, and I'm going to spend one day on this one sound of this one song because I want to make it perfect for myself, because that's what enriches me. In poker, I want to become the best at poker because it's a game, and I'm like so enthralled with the logic of it and the math of it, and I just love solving puzzles. And then through the process of doing all these things that you really love to do, then that leads to whatever that destination is of you performing on stage, or you making a living playing poker, or you having your own clothing brand. So for me, having a YouTube channel where a lot of people watch it and a lot of people value my opinion, and I am actually an influencer in the space of poker where people are paying me to come to the casino, that didn't happen because it was an accident, because like that was what I started out to do. It was 10 years, 12 years of grinding and learning so much about it, and then offering an insight and using my other skills through those 10 years of discovery on it. Because people know, if you're 6 months in and you're starting to make videos about your life as a poker player and you're 6 months in, people know that you don't really know what you're talking about like you should know what you're talking about. So there's no shortcut. It's just doing what you do and loving it so much, and eventually it turns into something that's fun and great.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Thank you so much. And I'll have all the links in the show notes. And of course, you can go to JohnnieVibes.com. And his YouTube channel is also Johnnie Vibes. Anything else?
Yeah, you can spell it any way you want, and you'll still arrive at my Johnnie Poker will take you to my YouTube channel.
Nice. All right, perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristy.